look, he's been fantastic in the league this season. What's he got? 11 appearances, 6 goals and 3 assists. He is stepping up levels at Bournemouth over the last year or so. He's really added a goal threat to his game. I remember watching him. I haven't watched Bournemouth loads and loads this season, but I did watch them on that opening night of the Premier League against Liverpool on a Friday night. He absolutely tore them to shreds. You know, carrying the ball all the way up the pitch. When I talk on the podcast about what kind of players I think United need to sign, I spoke about athletes for a long time, and I spoke about players who can carry the ball and run with it and have great feet and trickery and have that extra edge in an attacking third as well. Big difference makers who can deal with the rigors of the Premier League week in, week out. And I think Semenyo is one of the best examples in the Premier League and has been for a while of that kind of player. He's spoken in an interview that I recently mentioned on the pod as well about what Andoni Iraola wants out of him and his Bournemouth teammates. All he said was, he just wants you to run. He just wants you to run. And he does that fantastically well. He's got such a great engine. He can play in multiple positions anywhere across the front line, really. And he would make a hell of a lot of sense at this price. £65 million in January and potentially less in the summer. 60 million quid, I don't know, 55 million. We'll see what the developments are. But 65 million, if there's a club out there that signs him in January, you compare that to prices that were paid throughout last summer. Anthony Elanga going for 55 million quid. He's levels above for me, just so much better, so much more end product. I think this is a snip, really, for a club that has a proper position in mind for him. Then I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense to the club that decides to go and do it. But obviously United don't play with wingers. They play with 2 narrow number 10s who are able to carry the ball. Could Semenyo adapt to that? Potentially. That they have spoken to him in the past as well. I'll get into that in a second. He could play possibly up front. But the big question is, could he play at wing back in this United team? I'll talk through my opinions and my thoughts on that, because I know it's very much I could see it working for some people, or it's absolutely don't spend 65 million quid on a wing back. I get that too. I get both points. I'm going to make an argument over the course of the podcast, I think, in this section anyway, about why I think that 65 million quid, I think it's worth it. I don't think United will do it in January. I'll just say this now. I don't think this is something that we're likely to see in January. But again, I will make an argument, like I've done on a lot of episodes in the recent past. I will make an argument that United should go and put some money down in January to make their team better, because you really look at the table this season, look at the league this season, look at the teams that aren't really running away with it. We know United have weaknesses, and the midfield is the big one, obviously, but they do need more from the wing backs. They do need more from the wing backs. And I don't want to put him in that box and put him in that specific role, because I think there's lots more that he can add to the team. And it may not be the best move for him either, but this is a real good market opportunity, I think. United aren't going to have all of this their own way. But let me just talk about the developments over the course of last summer. United went for Antoine Semenyo, I think, before they ended up signing Bryan Mbeumo. I think there have been multiple reports on this issue and this interest, right? Which obviously never materialized. He ended up signing a new contract at Bournemouth, and obviously the contract that he signed has this release clause in it, or these things would trigger. So let's just run through what we know so far, or what has been reported so far. Obviously, there's going to be lots of conjecture and lots of different reporting from different places, some of which you can believe, some of which you maybe choose not to. But I'm going to, for the context of the conversation and for the sake of the conversation, I think it is worth mentioning this now. So this has been floating around for a little while, and Duncan Castles on his podcast talks about transfers specifically, has had good lines. He's had some, in my experience anyway, some misses as well, some hits, some misses, but I feel like this is worth a conversation. So he said at the end of the transfer window, I think it came out a couple of months ago, revealed on the podcast that Semenyo was aggressively, these are his words, aggressively targeted by Manchester United earlier this year. I think he credited it back to March, where Jason Wilcox, in his words, and Omar Barada had direct chats with Bournemouth, but they didn't want to go above 55 million quid. He said United agreed personal terms with Semenyo first, like they did with Mateus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo and I think Benjamin Sesko as well. Obviously, Newcastle were in the frame as well there. But that's been the way that United have done this recently with transfer targets that they want. They wanted to make sure that the players they were signing actually wanted to join United, and they really got those personal terms done and dusted first to give them the power in negotiations with the club. If they knew that the player wanted to join them, then United could drive a harder bargain. So he said they agreed personal terms with Semenyo first, but eventually Semenyo learned the salary would be less than 70% of what Matheus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo were asking for. I think we're putting them in the ballpark of about £150,000 a week. So maybe you think they're just quick maths off the top of my head. What are we looking at? 120, 110 potentially. And Bournemouth learned about that as well. And I think it managed to convince him to end up signing a new deal. It was pitched to him that he was best biding his time to wait for the right deal to come along. Now, I don't know whether United would have ended up signing Mbeumo if they'd have got Semenyo. Like, I think that is a real genuine question to have. But what Castles has pitched here, what he said, and again, this is like 2-3 months old now. He said United saw him as an alternative to Cunha and Mbeumo, but Bournemouth at the time thought that United were prepared to do all three transfers. And maybe that would have meant the Sesko pursuit, which ended up coming around a little bit later. Would they have potentially altered the position and where Matheus Cunha, what his best position on the pitch was? Would they have put him up front instead and maybe looked at Semenyo as the left 10 with Mbeumo as the right 10? I don't know. I'm speculating. But also, Ruben Amorim is said to have taken Antoine Semenyo for a meal as well to vet him and to check out his character. So it went pretty deep. If you believe what has been said here, and I have no reason to think really that all of this detail isn't legit. I would really think that if a journalist is putting this out there, and while the record is patchy, while he's putting this out there, the specifics of it make me think that there really seems to have been something in this. And United did actually want Antoine Semenyo. So will they revisit this? I wanted to talk about that to start with, because it really paints a picture of how intense United's interest in Semenyo was and has been. So maybe it gives you the impression that they would potentially revisit this down the line. If they tried to lowball him and went low on the salary, look, I don't know, maybe if it came to this next time, he would probably be looking for at least parity with the other guys, with Cunha and Mbeumo as well. But where does he fit in the team? That United have already signed a striker, but where does he go? Does he go to left wing back? Does he go right wing back? I don't know. But what we have now, right, is the 65 million clause is active in a certain part of the January transfer window, according to David Ornstein's latest report that came out on Monday afternoon, I think. So I'm talking about this on the Tuesday. 65 million clause active for a certain part of the January transfer window. And that clause is also, if it's not triggered in January, is also able to be triggered in the summer as well. And it will be less as well. So perhaps this is a case of United or another club who are out there who are looking at this deal. Maybe they do wait till the summer. And for the record, I don't think really, as it stands, that United are going to go and drop 65 million quid on a player that isn't a midfielder in January. I don't think that's going to happen, especially if the price is lower at the end of the season. You could really say, though, that maybe you will invite other clubs to the table and you'll have a hell of a lot more competition in the summer if you are to wait and you risk missing out on him. But United do have the credit facility. There has been talk from certain journalists and certain places that, look, it's unlikely that United will go and spend big money in January, but because the credit facility is there, maybe they would do it for a player that is a long-term target of theirs. And does Semenyo tick that box? Potentially does. For me, other important points here. AFCON is coming up, and while it's a very short window, I think it maybe around 2 weeks United will benefit from this if they can get the deal done and get him in like straight away. He's not at AFCON. Ghana are not at AFCON. So Semenyo will be present to play Premier League over the course of the festive period. And 11 appearances, 6 goals, 3 assists over the course of the season so far as well. Great record. I think I really like his ability to carry the ball. I really like his energy. I really like the player himself. Like, I think he's really, really impressed me, and he's really, really impressed a lot of people over the course of the last year or so, especially. This is a player who seems to be primed for a big move at some point. And look, United are in the mix potentially. They've not been ruled out of it yet, and maybe that will happen at some point. Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool. I'm looking at Mo Salah at the moment, and I'm thinking he signed his big contract in the summer, but now it looks like he's on the decline. I don't want to write him off like too early or whatever, but you know when a player loses a couple of yards of pace or loses a yard of pace, I think we're getting there with Mo Salah now, and he's just signed that big deal. It always seems to happen where players sign big contracts at that age and then they end up dropping off really sharply afterwards. Not saying that that's happening to Salah, but there are suggestions that that's the case. Arsenal have loads of players in attacking positions, but you look at the left side and you think, Martinelli, is he really cutting it there? Trossard, is he a long-term option there? Could Semenyo come in and instantly upgrade that position? Probably, but would Arsenal be likely to do that in January? Probably not either. So I don't know if Semenyo will get this move in January, but I'm going to talk about my thoughts on whether United should do it or not, because there's been lots of talk about where he fits in this team. And I asked that question, like I said, on X as well. Where does he fit in this team? Because there's not an obvious position for him. The two number 10 roles are taken by Cunha and Mbumo. He now have signed a striker. He can play anywhere across the front line. And the conclusion that has been jumped to by a few people, this is going on around on social media. Some have written it off as completely stupid. I don't think it's smart to do that, really. I think I'm going to try and paint a different picture for you. So, for what it's worth, United really should be, as much as they're looking at specialists, they do need players who, especially if they're going to get back into Europe next year, players who, A, can cover a lot of different positions, and B, have the physical aspects of the game like absolutely down to a T, who are able to deal with the rigors, I say this sentence all the time, the rigors of Premier League football every single week. And when you consider as well that United are really shooting for top 5 or Europa League or whatever it is, whichever position they end up finishing in the league, United's target this year is to get back into Europe. And as it stands, the squad that United currently have, although there are players who are not getting enough minutes that could move into the team and be really useful and benefit from those extra minutes that come with an extra game every week when European football comes around, the United squad, to me, we saw it last season. They did not have the physical capabilities of dealing with that intensity of football twice a week. United had to write off the Premier League towards the end of last season to get to the Europa League final. That was the focus. They did get there. They didn't win. Obviously, it is not the ideal outcome at all. But eventually, United will need to get back into Europe. They will be back in Europe at some point, I hope. At some point soon, hopefully this season. Champions League is still, I've been on the podcast and I've said that I think this is a realistic target for United this season with how the league is turning out. They're on 18 points in 8th place. They're 2 points, I think, off 2nd place, 3rd place. This is a real opportunity for United. And while there's not an immediate place in this team for Semenyo in terms of those attacking positions, what United do need to build is depth. And what United do need to build are more attacking options. They're scoring a hell of a lot more goals, but that wing-back position has been a problem. I do think that United need another one. Whether that's right or left, I don't know. But Dorgu, I spoke about him over the last few days and weeks, and I think there's more to come from him. I'm not saying that he's not going to be a really good long-term squad player for United, but I haven't seen enough yet to be absolutely convinced that he is nailed down the left wing back for Manchester United for the next 5 years. I don't have that impression of him yet, but he is very young. He will need time to develop. He can play on the right as well, as he started in Ruben Amorim's first game and people didn't like it. But I think what Dorgu does have is he's raised the physical floor of the United team again. I think we can expect more from him, hope for more from him as well. But at some point, I do think that United will need to add to their wing-back options. And what Semenyo does and what he has is flexibility, tactical flexibility. He can play, like I've said a couple of times already, on the right, on the left, or up front. You look at where he spends a lot of his time on the pitch and how much Iraola asks him to run. He spends a lot of time running backwards and running forwards. You need to defend as hard as you attack. That's kind of the go-to rule for a lot of managers and who have high intensity philosophies. And Semenyo is really fitting it like a glove at Bournemouth. And I think Ruben Amorim wants that out of his players as well. The big letdown of United at the moment, which has been improved over the course of the summer, is that physical flaw, is their ability to get around the pitch. I think Amorim is having to play within his own ideas a little bit because of the shortcomings that United have. And I'm speaking specifically about midfield here, but running forwards and attacking and running backwards, they're just as important. And I think for me, there are some games where I think Semenyo at left wing back can really work. There are others where I probably wouldn't do it. And this is not going to be the easiest sell in the world to a player like this. But what United do need to end up doing, and maybe this is like next year, maybe this is the plan next year. I even said yesterday that United's first port of call should be to get their starting 11 absolutely nailed down. And that's what I think they will do over the course of 2026. Get that starting 11 nailed down and sign the midfielders. But what they will need if they're back in Europe are options. Options to rotate, options to switch different positions, options to change tactical aggression or how aggressive and front foot he wants to be. Look, eventually Manchester United will need to build a squad that is capable of competing on all fronts. You've got to think of where United are looking to get to by the end of this. We all want Manchester United fighting for titles. And while you look at signings now and you think there are holes in the first team and the midfield needs a lot of attention, and that should obviously be the main point of call first. That's where you should really look at getting it right. And for what it's worth, I do think United need 3 midfielders, really. I've been thinking about it since the last podcast. 3 midfielders is probably necessary, but also wingbacks are necessary. Also, additional firepower is necessary. Different profiles of players are necessary as well. And United do need to get that first 11 right. But at some point in the next year or 18 months, we're going to be looking at depth. We're going to be looking at players with big profiles who are having to sit on the bench or act as rotation options or bomb squad options in the good sense. I think that's used as a term in rugby. There's having that quality of depth off the bench to go and change a game. And I'm not saying that Semenyo is that, and he should command a first team place, especially if you're spending 65 million on him pretty much straight away, he should. But United are going to need to rotate players. They're going to need to take things game by game and pick the right players to hurt the opposition or defend in the right way. And that's just got to be the way that it goes. United are shooting here eventually, and not too quickly. They're shooting here to start competing for titles again. That's where we need to get to. And while I'm jumping the gun a little bit and I'm saying that 65 million quid in a January transfer window for a player you met last summer and put a lot of groundwork in on, who doesn't automatically have a spot in the first team that you think he's going to fit in there and plug and play, and that's going to be the way that it is. I still think there's a lot of merit in considering this as a deal that could be done. Maybe this is more of a summer thing. Maybe United are going to watch this clause dwindle down. Do I see Semenyo going somewhere else in January? Not really. Do I see him moving in January? Not really. But there is an opportunity there for a club that wants to take this now. And I don't think United are really necessarily going to be burning into the funds to go and... Are they going to sign Semenyo, put 65 million down on the table, and then that's going to mean they can only sign 1 midfielder next summer? Well, you look at the plans that are in place. There was a report from ESPN over the last few days, I think this was Monday, from Mark Ogden, that said United... and look, we know this is the way that it's going, but this is just it written down and again reconfirmed. United's plan to strengthen their midfield options is how the article started. In next summer's transfer window is being shaped by the prospect of saving £1 million a week off the club's wage bill and reinvesting the savings on players capable of adding youth, energy, and long-term value to the heart of Ruben Amorim's team. So he's talking about midfield there specifically, but this goes for other positions for me as well. You look at Casemiro, Harry Maguire, Jadon Sancho. These are all players listed. Marcus Rashford's on 300 grand a week. And we talked about Bruno Fernandes at length as well and his future. All those players are among United's highest earners that are still contracted to the club on massive wages. They've got to be got rid of. They've got to be got rid of. So there's an argument for me to say here that just because you're spending 65 million quid on Semenyo in January, does that undercut you? Or are there other methods that United can use to cut money and save money to go and reinvest in the team to get those two midfielders anyway? You've also got to think of it this way. United might be burning through a transfer budget and putting this on their credit facility in January. But also, what if the extra goal threat that an Antoine Semenyo can add shoots you up a position or two? Does that give you a hell of a lot better chance to get into the Champions League? I think it does. There are concerns that I have about the midfield, absolutely. But I do think that we are not seeing the best of this United team yet because the wing-backs aren't working properly. Ahmad, we've seen there's some shortcomings that he has in a defensive sense, but we know what he can add in an attacking sense. We're looking at January and we're thinking, Mbeumo and Ahmad going on international duty at AFCON, we're going to be without them for ages, and United are really going to struggle. It's not a good thing, really, that you're like when an entire right side of your pitch, or the entire right side of the pitch, when that's away on international duty and you have to play matches, well, where are the goals going to come from? You need to figure out other positions on the pitch which can bring about goals. You need to find other ways to score than just have that right side being the heartbeat of your team. I'm talking about the left side as well. And the good thing is, Semenyo can fit into either of those two positions as well if you do want to rotate these players around. Gives you lots of options. He's really a really flexible player, two-footed. I think he's very, very capable as well of really nailing down any of those 5 positions in the team. And while he doesn't have an automatic place in the first team every single week, adding him to your squad in a January window and getting the goal threat that he has and the creative threat that he has from left wing back, from number 10, or as an extra option through the middle as a striker, all of this. If you go and get Champions League because you spent that money in January, you're going to make the money back anyway. So I think that is really worth a conversation at United about whether that's worth doing. Like I say, I don't think United will end up doing this in January, but I can definitely see the merit in doing it. I can definitely see the merit in them going out and getting a midfielder as well, potentially on loan. Or João Gomez, would he be available for 40 million in January? But I don't know. But United do have a long-term plan. There's an opportunity here to, for me, this January window, if you've got the money there, they were willing to spend it last summer on the credit facility. If you've got the money there, you can put it down and potentially jump. There's an opportunity in the Premier League to do this. Maybe an opportunity to get in the Champions League places a year earlier than you planned to, just with how the table is working, with how weak Liverpool are, how City have been good over the last few weeks, but they are more fallible than they've been in the past as well. Chelsea have their own problems. They've been good at times recently, but they're still beatable. United have beaten them this season as well. Tottenham will have loads of games to deal with in the Champions League and in the Premier League. They're not firing at home. There's a big chance for United, who don't have that extra, I'm going to call it a distraction because it's not a distraction, but those extra matches on top. They have full focus on domestic matters, full focus on the Premier League, full focus on winning the FA Cup potentially as well. That's all they have to deal with. And they have an advantage over a lot of teams in this league based on their aspirations in the league and like the amount of rest they will get. If you can add extra goal threats, you make your chances a hell of a lot better for me. There's other positions in the team which need to be firing more. And I look at left wing back and I think, yeah, I need to see more out of that position. When Dalot plays there, it doesn't work. When Mazraoui plays at right wing back, it doesn't work. But those defensive wing backs or full backs will be used at certain times when United need to take the sting out of matches. But they also do need options on the other side to go and add an extra dimension to their attack. And the left side needs to be sorted out as well. I still think that it's going to be a position that they investigate at some point and that they look at potentially adding. And while Semenyo isn't that natural left wing back, I think there's definitely a case that can be made for him to play there sometimes. There's definitely a case that can be made for him to play in one of the three positions up front as well. And not all of these players in Manchester United's finished form are going to be playing all the time. So it's going to be a difficult sell for him. And I do still have doubts, I've got to be honest, about whether this deal can be done at any point in 2026. But it's about how well United are selling this project to players. And this is a real opportunity on the market to go and get a proven Premier League player who lifts the physical floor of your team, who is gasping for an opportunity to play for a bigger club. Although I will say, I think he's an Arsenal fan. So maybe he's going to be waiting out to see if Arsenal come back to him, because that left wing position at Arsenal, while they have loads of players that they do need to clear out first, it does, to me, I think if there's a position, probably makes a lot of sense for him to play there. But will Arsenal go and do it? I don't know. They've still got a lot of options there. Eze is playing out there. You've got Martinelli, you've got Trossard, you've got loads of other players that Arsenal need to fit into this team. And there's been some suggestions over the last day or so that their squad cost ratio, which needs to be carefully balanced for getting into Champions League competitions and European competitions, this kind of thing. Maybe they're on the threshold of that, so they need to sell some players to raise a bit of money first. That might give United an advantage. It might. And just to sum up here, I suppose, I don't think this will happen, but I really think that there's an opportunity somewhere in this January transfer window for United to go and get an advantage and get maybe a head start on other clubs and get a head start on even some of their own ambitions for the seasons to come. If they can get in the Champions League this year, it's going to be an absolute game changer. And I think putting that money down on a player like this who can make a massive difference in an attacking sense to what your team can do might be worth a few points come the end of the season. We know that United really fall off at certain points in matches. Having a player with that kind of energy rotating in or out of the team, big difference. And United need more. They need midfielders. They need, I've said it a long time, they need a wing back. I think they do. They also probably need more depth up front. He ticks so many boxes that maybe United will end up exploring this one again. They've already gone to a hell of a long length to try and convince him to join in the first place. If Bournemouth felt like they were ready to do all three, maybe there's some merit in it. But let me know what you think. Look, this is an issue where I get it. Spending 65 million quid on a person that isn't a midfielder after United went and signed 3 attackers in the summer and ignored the midfield, I get it. It's not my highest priority either. But I'm trying to look at this a different way and shape an argument a little bit differently. There's a job he can do in multiple positions. I think he's a really useful player to have across the squad. And convincing him to play this role, look, you're onto a bit of a loser there, but it depends how much he believes in the project and how capable United are going to be of being or hitting the targets over the next few years that they want to hit. We've not seen enough really out of United over the last few years to believe that they will get back on that upward trajectory consistently and be back competing for titles by 2028. We still need to see a hell of a lot more than that, but that is the ambition. And you have to, in order to do that, and to compete on more fronts, you have to build a squad that is absolutely stacked nowadays. Look at all the players that don't get on the pitch all the time for Manchester City. Look at all the players that don't get on the pitch all the time and start matches for Arsenal. You need that depth in there. And I think Semenyo is a really good option to come in and start a hell of a lot of matches, to rotate into different positions and to add an extra dimension to Manchester United's team as well. And maybe there are ways that United can go and get those midfielders anyway in the summer of 2026. Or maybe they can go and get a player on loan in the midfield in January and do this deal. I don't know. United have cut a lot of costs over the past year or so with the hope and ambition that they will be able to be a superpower in the transfer market again at some point in the next couple of years. So we're waiting to see what happens there. There's still more wages to cut, and I've no doubt that they will eventually do that as well. And they'll start raising some money in order to reinvest in the team. Hopefully, United can really get back to competing properly as soon as possible. I think this deal would really help. But let me know. I know not everybody's probably going to agree with that, but I just want to make a case for it. United need depth. United need a really strong squad. United need players of this quality to come in and be a part of their team. And I think Semenyo is an absolute class act. I think he's brilliant. I would love to see him join Manchester United. But let me know in the comments what you think, what his best position might be in this team, how you would imagine he fits in. If what I've said has got any merit, let me know in the comments as well. I've just been trying to think about this in terms of a squad building sense. I'm not saying that Semenyo is going to go for this option as absolute number one at all. But if there's a way to do it, it's worth exploring. But yes, subscribe to the podcast if you've not done so already on Apple, Spotify, all audio podcast platforms, and on YouTube as well. Please subscribe to those channels, like the video, 5-star reviews, and all of this kind of stuff. Get in the comment section as well, and follow me on social, and get in touch with me on social at @_Scott Saunders on Instagram and TikTok as well. See you soon, everyone, for another episode of the Promised Land podcast.